Breaking. Downing Street is under siege as we speak. Keir Starmer just lost control of his own cabinet in a dramatic power struggle that's sending shockwaves through British politics. Half his ministers refused to attend this morning's emergency meeting. 15 MPs have already submitted letters of no confidence. And what happened next could trigger the fastest government collapse in modern British history. Here's what sparked this unprecedented crisis. Just 26 hours ago, at exactly 9:47 a.m. yesterday, Starmer made a catastrophic decision behind closed doors. His exact words to senior staff were chilling. "We're implementing full wealth redistribution measures immediately, regardless of economic consequences." The statement wasn't just controversial. It was political suicide. The Treasury warned such actions could trigger market panic. Experts predicted catastrophic capital flight. But Starmer wasn't listening to reason anymore. His exact words leaked to the press within hours. "The wealthy have enjoyed their privilege long enough. It's time for forced economic rebalancing regardless of the short-term pain." Senior ministers were blindsided completely. Chancellor Rachel Reeves wasn't even consulted before this radical shift. When confronted by reporters outside Parliament at 2:15 p.m, she looked visibly shocked. Her face drained of colour on live television. I cannot comment at this time," she stammered before being rushed away by aides. Within minutes, markets reacted violently. The FTSE 100 plunged 7% in just 3 hours. The pound crashed to its lowest level against the dollar in 15 years. Economic experts called it Black Tuesday, a financial bloodbath not seen since Brexit. Former Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey issued an unprecedented warning. Britain stands on the edge of economic self-destruction. The response inside Whitehall was immediate and devastating. But wait, because this is where it gets even more shocking. 3 cabinet ministers immediately demanded emergency meetings. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper reportedly slammed her office door so hard that pictures fell from the walls. Defence Secretary John Healey threatened immediate resignation. 5 junior ministers actually did resign within hours, their letters hitting social media before Downing Street could even respond. The government wasn't just fracturing, it was imploding in real time while the world watched in disbelief. Meanwhile, ordinary British pensioners who worked their entire lives building this nation are suffering unimaginable hardship. Arthur Jenkins, a 8-year-old former Royal Navy veteran from Plymouth, can't afford to heat his home this winter. "I served this country for 42 years, he told reporters with tears streaming down his weathered face. "Now I have to choose between eating or staying warm." His pension buys half what it did last year. His energy bills have tripled. His medication costs have skyrocketed beyond reach, and he's not alone. Margaret Wilson, 72, from Newcastle, collapsed from hypothermia last week because she couldn't afford to turn on her heating. Doctors say she nearly died. Army veteran Robert Thompson, 81, from Glasgow, now relies on food banks after serving Britain for 3 decades. These aren't isolated cases. Over 2.3 million British pensioners now live in absolute poverty. That's a 34% increase since last year alone, while political elites enjoy lavish taxpayer-funded lifestyles without consequence. We're talking £25,000 spent on redecorating ministerial offices last month alone, £175,000 on catering for international delegations. £300 bottles of champagne at diplomatic receptions while pensioners freeze. The contrast is so stark, so morally repugnant that even lifelong Labour supporters are turning against their own party. Working-class voters in traditional Labour strongholds like Newcastle and Manchester are abandoning Starmer in droves, with approval ratings plummeting 23 points in just 3 days. Here's where the situation becomes unprecedented. Former Labour voters are forming spontaneous protest groups in 27 cities across Britain. In Birmingham, 8,000 demonstrators filled Victoria Square yesterday, many tearing up their Labour membership cards on live television. In Liverpool, traditional Labour heartland, protesters burned Starmer's effigy outside the City Hall. These aren't right-wing agitators. They're lifelong Labour supporters who feel betrayed by a government that promised to protect them. But then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles shattered centuries of royal protocol with a single decisive action. At Windsor Castle, during what should have been a routine ceremonial meeting, the King broke with constitutional precedent to deliver a stark warning directly to the Prime Minister. The suffering of ordinary British citizens cannot be ignored any longer, Charles declared with controlled but visible emotion. When government fails its most basic duties to protect the vulnerable, the Crown cannot remain silent. And just when you thought it couldn't get more extraordinary, Charles did something no monarch has done since Queen Victoria. He requested detailed economic briefings from independent analysts, bypassing government channels completely. Constitutional experts were stunned. Professor Elizabeth Montgomery from Cambridge University called it the most significant royal intervention in economic policy in over a century. The palace, breaking with tradition, didn't deny these reports. Instead, a senior royal source confirmed Charles was deeply troubled by the suffering of ordinary Britons. Palace insiders reveal the conversation quickly deteriorated. Starmer appeared visibly agitated and defensive while the King remained composed but firm. One royal aide described it as the most tense exchange between monarch and prime minister in living memory. Senior sources within Buckingham Palace confirm. Charles presented Starmer with detailed reports on pensioner poverty and middle-class financial distress. The optics are devastating for a Labour government that promised to protect the working class. Constitutional experts call it the most significant royal intervention in politics since the abdication crisis of 1936. But here's what the mainstream media isn't telling you. The King also presented evidence that Starmer's economic plans had been developed by a secretive think tank with questionable foreign funding. 3 separate royal sources confirmed Charles questioned the Prime Minister directly about these connections. Starmer reportedly became defensive and hostile, refusing to address the specific allegations. The meeting, scheduled for 45 minutes, ended abruptly after just 19 minutes when Starmer stood up and left without following proper protocol. The effects were immediate and far-reaching. Financial markets reacted instantly, with sterling dropping 4.3% against major currencies within hours. Major investment banks issued emergency advisories to clients. JP Morgan's urgent bulletin warned of unprecedented political instability in the UK. Political fractures appeared across Westminster as Labour MPs began publicly distancing themselves from Starmer. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy refused to defend the PM in a brutal BBC interview. "Leadership requires listening," he said pointedly, stopping just short of outright criticism. International reactions were equally swift. The European Union paused negotiations on financial services agreements. American Secretary of State Anthony Blinken expressed deep concern about UK stability during a State Department briefing. Social media exploded with "Number Starmer resigned" trending globally for 37 straight hours. Over 650,000 tweets demanded his immediate resignation. Polls showed Labour's support collapsing to just 27%, the lowest level since the disastrous 2019 election. Public protests erupted across 14 major cities, with over 75,000 demonstrators filling Trafalgar Square by nightfall. And here's where it gets truly astonishing. Civil servants began leaking documents at unprecedented rates. Treasury officials anonymously released economic projections showing Starmer's policies could increase unemployment by 800,000 jobs within 6 months. Defence Ministry sources revealed military leadership was deeply concerned about government stability. The civil service, traditionally neutral, was effectively revolting against the government. Inside Number 10, complete chaos has engulfed Starmer's inner circle. Ministers are openly fighting in corridors. Chief of Staff Sue Gray allegedly threatened to resign during a heated 2 a.m. strategy session. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner was overheard saying, "He's completely lost control. We can't save him now." WhatsApp groups with names like Operation Survival and Post-Keir Planning are plotting leadership transitions. Cabinet ministers are refusing to appear on television to defend government policy. One minister was caught on a hot mic saying, "It's over. We're just arranging the funeral now." Foreign diplomats report being unable to get clear policy guidance from any government department. 3 scheduled international trade meetings were abruptly cancelled yesterday. Civil servants describe total paralysis across Whitehall, with senior officials unwilling to implement any new directives from Number 10. The question isn't if they'll force Starmer out, it's when. Senior Labour figures describe the atmosphere as completely toxic, with ministers openly discussing replacement candidates. Starmer looked broken and defeated at yesterday's PMQs. Sources say his hands were visibly shaking as he gathered his papers. Long-time allies are abandoning him hourly as the government appears to be imploding from within. Even his closest advisers admit privately that resignation may be inevitable within days. But here's the bombshell revelation that could end his premiership instantly. Classified Treasury documents show Starmer was explicitly warned about economic collapse 6 weeks ago by the confidential analysis, coded Project Economic Stability, predicted catastrophic consequences if wealth redistribution policies were implemented without market safeguards. If these documents are genuine, and if they contain what 3 separate sources claim, then Starmer knowingly pushed policies that Treasury experts warned would devastate the British economy. We've obtained exclusive details of these documents from a senior Treasury source. The report specifically warned of market panic, capital flight, and currency devaluation if redistribution policies were implemented without proper transition measures. It predicted unemployment could reach 9.7% within a year, inflation could spike to 12%, and government borrowing costs could double almost overnight. Most damning of all, Starmer personally signed the document's cover page, acknowledging he had read and understood these warnings. Think about what that means. The Prime Minister deliberately ignored warnings from his own financial experts about potential economic disaster. He put ideological pursuit above the financial security of every British citizen. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating for a government already on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, opposition leader Rishi Sunak is methodically positioning himself as the voice of economic stability. While Starmer stumbles through crisis after crisis, Sunak appears statesmanlike and measured. Britain needs economic competence, not ideological experiments, he declared to thunderous applause at yesterday's Conservative conference. The polls tell the story. Conservative support has surged 12 points in just 1 week. For the first time since losing power last year, the Conservatives lead in key marginal constituencies. Sunak isn't just offering criticism, he's presenting a comprehensive sum-for economic recovery plan that's resonating with voters terrified by market instability. But here's what few people have noticed. Nigel Farage's Reform UK party is the real beneficiary of this chaos. In working-class Labour heartlands, Reform UK support has exploded by 19 points in just 3 days. In 6 traditional Labour constituencies, Reform UK now leads in the polls. Political analysts call it the most dramatic shift in voter alignment in a generation. Farage himself has been masterful, appearing on every major news network, projecting calm authority, while others panic. The next 72 hours are absolutely critical. Financial markets remain in freefall. The Bank of England is considering emergency interest rate hikes. International investors are fleeing British assets at unprecedented rates. The question is no longer whether Starmer can recover politically. It's whether Britain's economic foundations can withstand this level of instability. The country is watching its government disintegrate in real time with potentially catastrophic consequences for millions of ordinary citizens. Economic experts predict food shortages could begin within weeks if the crisis continues. Energy companies warn of potential brownouts as international contracts become untenable. Government bonds are being downgraded hourly, pushing borrowing costs to unsustainable levels. NHS trusts report being unable to secure critical medication imports as supply chains fracture under financial uncertainty. This crisis will be studied for decades as Britain's most severe political meltdown since the winter of discontent. At its epicentre stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly isolated, desperate and incapable of controlling his own government. Historians are already calling this the most rapid collapse of prime ministerial authority in modern British history. With each passing hour, resignation pressure intensifies from all sides: the public, his party, the public, and even international allies. So here's the question that matters. Is this the end of Starmer's political career? Did he just commit the most catastrophic economic misjudgment in modern British history? Or Did he accidentally trigger the Conservative resurgence nobody saw coming? What do you think? Will King Charles make another unprecedented move to stabilise the nation? Or has the constitutional damage already gone too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Britain right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full story about this government's collapse, but we will. And tomorrow, we'll reveal the secret document that proves who's really controlling Starmer's failed economic policies.